The discovery. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he surveyed the massive mining operation spread out before him. The red dust of Kepler 442b swirled around the industrial crawlers and excavation mechs that worked tirelessly under the alien sun. As the human foreman of mining station Delta 7, he had seen plenty of strange things buried in the planet's crust over the past 5 years, but nothing had prepared him for what his team discovered that morning. "Boss, you need to see this," called Jenkins, one of his most experienced miners, over the comm system. The urgency in his voice made Marcus drop his morning coffee and grab his helmet. The walk to excavation site 12 took 15 minutes across the rocky terrain. Marcus had learned to trust Jenkins' instincts over the years. The grizzled miner had worked on 7 different worlds and had an eye for spotting unusual geological formations. When Marcus arrived at the site, he found Jenkins standing next to a massive hole that the mining crawler had carved into the mountainside. "What am I looking at?" Marcus asked, peering into the dark cavity. Jenkins pointed his flashlight into the opening. "About 30 meters down, sir. We were following a rich vein of trilithium when the crawler broke through into what looks like a natural cave system. But there's something in there that definitely isn't natural." Marcus activated his own high-powered beam and directed it into the depths. What he saw made him catch his breath. Embedded in the cave wall, covered in thick layers of mineral deposits and crystalline growths, was something that looked distinctly artificial. The shape was enormous, easily 20 meters long, with what appeared to be metallic surfaces beneath the accumulated grime of millennia. "Have you contacted the xenoarchaeology team on the orbital station?" Marcus asked. "First thing I did, boss, but they're 3 days out, and corporate wants us to keep mining. They say whatever it is, it's probably just some old Zephyrian ruins." Marcus frowned. The Zephyrians were a peaceful trading species that had colonized this sector thousands of years ago, but their technology was well documented and looked nothing like what lay buried in the cave below. This was something entirely different. "I'm going down for a closer look," Marcus decided. Jenkins looked worried. "Sir, with respect, shouldn't we wait for the experts? Corporate breathing down our necks means we can't afford to wait. Besides, I've got enough xenotechnology training to make a preliminary assessment." Marcus suited up in his environmental gear and rappelled into the cave. The descent felt longer than 30 meters, and as he got closer to the mysterious object, he realized why. The thing was massive, far larger than it had appeared from above. What he had initially taken for a single artifact was actually just a small portion of something much bigger. His boots touched solid ground, and Marcus activated his suit's floodlights. The cave around him lit up, revealing a sight that made his jaw drop. The object wasn't just buried in the wall, it filled the entire cavern. Smooth, organic-looking curves stretched away into the darkness, covered in 2,000 years' worth of mineral buildup and strange, glowing fungi that had made their home on its surface. Marcus approached carefully, his scanner beeping as it analyzed the readings. The device was going crazy, detecting energy signatures it couldn't classify and materials that weren't in its database. But as he got closer, certain features became unmistakable. Those weren't random curves. They were designed, purpose-built. And beneath all the accumulated grime and growth, Marcus could make out what looked like scales. "Jenkins," he called over the comm, his voice barely steady. "I think we found a dragon." The silence that followed stretched for nearly a full minute before Jenkins's voice crackled back. "Say again, boss?" "A dragon. A mechanical dragon. Or maybe biological. Hell, I can't tell what it is, but it's definitely dragon-shaped." Marcus moved along what he assumed was the creature's flank, his lights revealing more details with each step. The surface beneath the mineral deposits showed intricate patterns that could have been technological circuitry or natural scale formations. In some places, the buildup was thinner, and Marcus could see what looked like armor plating with a deep, metallic blue-green color. As he rounded what might have been the creature's shoulder, Marcus found himself face to face with its head. Even covered in crystalline growth and strange fungi, the features were unmistakable. The skull was elongated and powerful, with what appeared to be sensor arrays or perhaps horns protruding from various points. Most striking of all were the eyes, or rather, the eye sockets. They were massive, designed for organs that could have seen across vast distances, or perhaps into spectrums humans couldn't perceive. Marcus reached out tentatively and touched the surface near what might have been the creature's snout. The moment his gloved hand made contact, something extraordinary happened. A faint vibration ran through the cavern, and several of the glowing fungi suddenly pulsed brighter. His scanner went silent for a moment, then erupted in a cascade of readings that made no sense. "Boss, what's happening down there? We're getting some weird energy spikes up here." Marcus pulled his hand back quickly. "I think I accidentally activated something. The whole thing might still be alive, or at least powered." He spent the next hour documenting everything he could see, taking hundreds of photos and sensor readings. The more he studied the creature, the more convinced he became that this was no Zephyrian artifact. The technology, if it was technology, was unlike anything in the known databases. The biological elements, if they were biological, belonged to no known species. When Marcus finally climbed back to the surface, he found Jenkins waiting with a concerned expression and a steaming cup of coffee. "So?" Jenkins asked simply. Marcus removed his helmet and accepted the coffee gratefully. "It's big, it's old, and it's like nothing I've ever seen. The scanner readings suggest it might actually be alive, just dormant. The energy signatures are too complex for any known technology, but too organized for natural phenomena. What do we do?" Before Marcus could answer, his comm unit chimed with an incoming message from corporate. The message was brief and to the point: continue mining operations. Preliminary assessment indicates Zephyrian ruins of minimal archaeological value. Avoid unnecessary delays. Marcus stared at the message in disbelief. They can't be serious. "What's the word from upstairs?" Jenkins asked. "They want us to keep digging. They think it's just some old ruins." Jenkins shook his head. "With respect, boss, that thing down there is a lot of things, but just some old ruins ain't one of them." Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "We're going to clean it up." "Sir?" "Look, corporate wants us to keep mining, fine, but they never said we couldn't clean off whatever we find in the process. Officially, we're just clearing away loose debris and mineral deposits to better assess the archaeological value." Jenkins grinned. "And unofficially?" "Unofficially, we're going to wake up a dragon." Over the next several days, Marcus quietly assembled a team of his most trusted miners. He chose people who had worked with him for years, individuals who understood that sometimes the most important discoveries happened when you went against official protocol. The team included Jenkins, naturally, plus Maria Santos, an engineer who specialized in exotic materials, and David Kim, a former xenobiologist who had taken a mining job for the steady pay. They worked in shifts, careful not to attract too much attention from the orbital supervisors. Using precision cleaning equipment normally reserved for delicate mineral extraction, they began the painstaking process of removing 2 millennia's worth of buildup from the creature's surface. The work revealed wonders with each passing hour. Beneath the mineral deposits, the creature's hide showed intricate patterns that seemed to shift between technological and organic. Some areas appeared to be armor plating with microscopic circuitry etched into the surface. Other sections looked like genuine scales, but scales made from some unknown metamaterial that showed properties of both metal and living tissue. Maria's analysis of the materials yielded impossible results. "According to my tests," she reported during one of their evening briefings, "this thing is made from substances that shouldn't exist. The molecular structure shifts depending on environmental conditions. In some areas, it's harder than diamond. In others, it's flexible like living skin. David's biological scans were equally puzzling. "I'm detecting cellular activity," he said. "But the cells don't match any known biological patterns. They're too regular to be natural evolution, but too complex to be artificial constructs. It's like someone took the concept of life and redesigned it from the ground up." As they cleaned more of the creature's surface, new details emerged. What Marcus had initially taken for decorative patterns were actually functional elements. Some sections contained what appeared to be weapon systems, elegant and organic-looking but unmistakably designed for destruction. Other areas showed what could only be sensory equipment, arrays of crystalline structures that probably served as eyes, ears, or sensors for detecting things beyond human perception. But the most remarkable discovery came when they began cleaning the creature's head. As the mineral buildup fell away from the skull, they revealed not just the eye sockets Marcus had seen earlier, but a complex network of what appeared to be neural interfaces. Crystalline structures jutted from various points on the skull, each one inscribed with patterns that looked like circuitry but felt like art. "It's beautiful," Maria whispered, as they illuminated the cleaned skull with their work lights. "I've never seen anything so perfectly designed." The creature's face, now visible beneath the accumulated grime, was both terrifying and magnificent. The skull was elongated and predatory, with sensor arrays that could have been horns or antennae positioned at strategic points. The jaw, when they finally cleaned it, revealed rows of what were definitely teeth, but teeth made from the same impossible metamaterial as the rest of the creature. David ran his scanners over the neural interfaces with growing excitement. "Marcus, I think these are connection ports, like this thing was designed to interface directly with other technology or maybe with other minds." "What kind of minds?" Marcus asked. "I don't know, but the complexity suggests something far beyond human-level intelligence. This thing was built to think, to reason, maybe even to feel." As the cleaning progressed, they began to uncover evidence of damage. Sections of the creature's hide showed what appeared to be battle scars, places where the armor had been breached or the scales had been torn away. Some of the weapon systems showed signs of having been fired extensively. Whatever this creature was, it had seen combat before entering its long sleep. The breakthrough came on their 7th day of cleaning. Marcus was working on clearing mineral deposits from one of the neural interface points when his cleaning tool slipped and made direct contact with the crystalline structure beneath. The moment metal touched crystal, the entire cavern lit up. Energy raced along the creature's surface, following pathways that had been invisible until that moment. The neural interfaces began to glow with a soft blue-white light, and a deep resonant hum filled the air. Marcus stumbled backward as the creature's eyes, previously dark and lifeless, began to show the faintest glimmer of awakening awareness. "Everyone out!" Marcus shouted, but his team was already moving. They had all felt the change in the air, the sudden sense that something vast and ancient was stirring to life. They reached the surface just as the ground beneath their feet began to vibrate. Emergency alarms started sounding across the mining station as sensors detected the massive energy signature emanating from deep within the excavation site. Marcus's comm unit exploded with incoming messages from the orbital station, from corporate headquarters, from mining stations across the sector. Everyone wanted to know what was happening on Kepler 442b. Standing on the rim of the excavation site, watching energy patterns dance through the rocks below, Marcus realized that his life, and possibly the fate of human civilization, had just taken a dramatic turn. The dragon was waking up, and he was the one who had cleaned away the sleep of 2,000 years. The awakening. The vibrations from deep within the excavation site grew stronger by the hour. Marcus stood in the command center of Mining Station Delta 7, watching his instruments register energy readings that shouldn't have been possible. 3 days had passed since he had accidentally triggered the creature's awakening, and the entire mining operation had ground to a halt. Sir, we're getting another communication request from Admiral Castellanos on the orbital station, reported Lieutenant Torres, the station's communication officer. That's the fifth one today. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. He hadn't slept more than a few hours since the dragon began stirring. Put him through, but audio only. I'm not ready for another round of accusations and demands. The Admiral's voice filled the command center, sharp with military authority and barely controlled frustration. Foreman Chen, I'm ordering you to evacuate your station immediately. The energy readings we're detecting suggest you've awakened something that could pose a threat to this entire sector. With respect, Admiral, I'm not military personnel. You can't order me to do anything. And besides, evacuating might be the worst thing we could do right now. Explain. Marcus looked at the data streaming across his screens. David Kim had been monitoring the creature's vital signs, if they could be called that, around the clock, and the patterns were becoming clearer. The energy signatures are consistent with a controlled awakening process. Whatever this thing is, it's not just randomly powering up. It's running diagnostics, checking systems, probably trying to figure out where it is and what happened to it. And you think it's safe to remain in proximity to an unknown alien weapon system? I think it's safer than running away and leaving it to wake up alone and confused. The truth was, Marcus wasn't entirely sure of anything. But over the past 3 days, he had developed something that might have been called intuition about the creature. The energy patterns weren't chaotic or threatening. They felt thoughtful, deliberate, like the creature was taking its time to understand its situation before taking any action. David appeared at Marcus's shoulder, holding a data pad filled with readings. Admiral, if I may, he interjected. We've been tracking neural activity patterns, and they're remarkably similar to what we see in highly intelligent species during problem-solving tasks. This entity appears to be trying to communicate. Communicate how? Low-frequency electromagnetic pulses, organized in complex patterns. It's been sending these signals toward our station for the past 18 hours. We think it's trying to establish contact. Admiral Castellanos was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different tone. You're telling me this thing is trying to talk to you? We think so, yes. Have you attempted to respond? Marcus and David exchanged glances. They had been debating this exact question for hours. Not yet, Marcus admitted. We wanted to understand the communication patterns better before attempting contact. Foreman Chen, I'm dispatching Dr. Elena Vasquez from our Xenolinguistics department. She'll arrive on the next shuttle along with a full diplomatic team. Until then, do not attempt any communication with this entity. That's not a request. The comm channel closed, leaving Marcus staring at his instruments. The energy readings showed another pulse sequence had begun, more complex than the previous ones. The creature was definitely trying to tell them something. So, what do we do? Asked Maria, who had been quietly monitoring the structural integrity of the excavation site. Wait for the diplomats to arrive and hope the dragon doesn't get impatient? Before Marcus could answer, every alarm in the station began sounding simultaneously. The energy readings from the excavation site spiked beyond anything they had recorded, and the ground beneath the station shook with such force that several people were knocked from their feet. It's moving! David shouted over the noise. The creature is actually moving! Marcus rushed to the external cameras and switched the main display to show the excavation site. What he saw took his breath away. The creature wasn't just awake. It was emerging from the cavern. The head appeared first, rising from the depths like something from ancient mythology. Even covered in the remaining mineral deposits and strange fungi, it was magnificent. The skull was the size of a small spacecraft, with sensor arrays that glowed with soft blue light. The eyes, massive, multifaceted organs that seemed to see in spectrums beyond human comprehension, swept across the mining station with obvious intelligence. "My God," whispered Maria. "It's beautiful." The creature's emergence was slow and careful, as if it understood that sudden movements might be interpreted as threatening. More of the body became visible as it rose from the cavern, a serpentine neck that seemed to go on forever, followed by massive shoulders that supported what appeared to be folded wings. Marcus found himself walking toward the station's exit, drawn by an impulse he couldn't explain. Behind him, he could hear David shouting something about safety protocols and Maria calling for him to wait. But the words seemed to come from very far away. The creature's head had cleared the excavation site entirely now, and it was scanning the mining station with obvious curiosity. When its gaze fell on Marcus, who was now standing in the station's main airlock, everything went quiet. The moment stretched between human and dragon, two alien intelligences studying each other across an impossible gulf of biology and technology. Marcus felt as though he was being examined by something vast and ancient, a mind that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. Then the creature did something unexpected. It lowered its massive head toward the station, moving with deliberate care, and made a sound that was part mechanical hum and part organic vocalization. The sound carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones, and somehow, impossibly, he understood its meaning. Gratitude. The dragon was thanking him. Marcus raised his hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peaceful greeting. The creature's eyes focused on the movement, and another sound emerged from its throat. This one containing what seemed like dozens of different tones and frequencies. "Marcus, get back in here!" David's voice crackled over his comm unit. "We're reading massive energy buildup in the creature's neural systems. Something's about to happen." But Marcus couldn't move. The dragon's communication wasn't just sound. It was somehow transmitting meaning directly into his mind. Images flashed through his consciousness. Vast fleets of ships moving between stars, battles fought in the depths of space, a world dying beneath poisoned skies, and a desperate last hope entrusted to sleeping guardians. The creature's name came to him suddenly, as clear as if someone had spoken it aloud. Kyrathex, the Star Guardian. And with the name came understanding. This wasn't just a weapon or a war machine. It was a protector, a defender of worlds, one of a scattered fleet that had sacrificed themselves to stop something terrible from spreading across the galaxy. Kyrathex had been sleeping for 2,000 years, waiting for the threat to return. And according to the images flooding Marcus's mind, that wait was almost over. The psychic connection broke suddenly, leaving Marcus gasping and disoriented. Kyrathex pulled back, its massive head tilting as if studying the human's reaction to the information download. "Marcus!" David was beside him now, scanner in hand, taking readings. "What happened? Your brain activity just spiked off the charts." He told me who he is. What he is." Marcus struggled to organize the flood of information he had received. "His name is Kyrathex. He's some kind of guardian designed to protect worlds from something that's coming back." Maria joined them, her own scanner beeping frantically as it tried to analyze the energy patterns surrounding the dragon. "The structural integrity of the cavern is holding, but barely. If he tries to emerge completely, the whole mountainside could collapse." As if responding to her concern, Kyrathex began to settle back into the excavation site. But his eyes remained fixed on Marcus, and the human could feel the weight of expectation in that gaze. The dragon was waiting for something, a decision, perhaps, or a commitment. "He wants our help," Marcus said suddenly. "That's why he made contact with me specifically. He sensed that humans might be the allies his people hoped to find." David looked skeptical. How could he know anything about humans? "We've only been spacefaring for a few centuries. Time works differently for him. He's been monitoring electromagnetic transmissions, learning about us while he slept. He knows more about our civilization than we know about his." Before anyone could respond, a new shuttle signature appeared on their sensors. Admiral Castellanos and the diplomatic team were arriving ahead of schedule. Marcus felt a moment of panic. Military first contact protocols were notoriously rigid, and he wasn't sure that traditional diplomacy would work with Kyrathex. "Marcus," Maria said quietly, "look at the excavation site." Kyrathex was doing something extraordinary. Energy was flowing from his body into the surrounding rock, and the mineral deposits that had covered him for 2 millennia were beginning to dissolve. But more than that, the mountain itself was changing. Stone was reshaping itself, creating stable platforms and passages. The dragon was terraforming the excavation site into something more suitable for ongoing contact. "He's preparing for visitors," David breathed. "He understands that more humans are coming." The shuttle landed 20 minutes later, disgorging Admiral Castellanos, Dr. Vasquez, and a squad of Marines in full combat gear. Marcus met them at the landing pad, trying to project an air of calm confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Foreman Chen," the Admiral said briskly, "I want a full briefing on everything that's happened since our last communication." "Admiral, before we do anything else, you need to understand that this isn't a threat situation. Kyrathex, that's the dragon's name, is a protector. He's been waiting for allies, not enemies." Dr. Vasquez, a middle-aged woman with intense dark eyes, stepped forward. "You've established linguistic contact with the entity?" "Not linguistic exactly. Telepathic, I think. He shared information directly, mind to mind." The Admiral's expression darkened. "You allowed an unknown alien entity to access your mind? That was extremely reckless, Foreman." "It was also necessary," Marcus replied firmly, "and it may have saved all our lives. According to Kyrathex, there's something coming, something that destroyed his civilization 2,000 years ago and forced them to go into hibernation. The Guardians were scattered across the galaxy to watch and wait." "Watch for what?" Marcus felt the weight of the dragon's knowledge pressing against his consciousness. "The Devourers, a species that consumes entire worlds, stripping them of all life and leaving nothing but dead rock behind. They move in cycles, sleeping for millennia between feeding periods. Kyrathex believes they're beginning to wake up." The group stood in silence for a moment, processing this information. Finally, Dr. Vasquez spoke. "If this is true, we need to establish formal communication protocols immediately. Can you facilitate another contact session?" Marcus looked toward the excavation site, where Kyrathex's modified environment was still taking shape. "I think he's waiting for us." The walk to the excavation site felt like a pilgrimage. With each step, Marcus could feel Kyrathex's awareness touching the edges of his mind, not intrusively, but like a gentle presence acknowledging his approach. The changes the dragon had made to the mountainside were remarkable. What had once been rough excavation work was now a series of elegant terraces and platforms, perfectly suited for human visitors. The stone itself seemed to glow with a soft inner light. Kyrathex waited for them on the largest platform, his massive form arranged in what was clearly a deliberately non-threatening posture. His head was lowered to bring his eyes closer to human level, and his wings were folded tight against his body. Everything about his positioning suggested peaceful intent. Dr. Vasquez approached with professional calm, but Marcus could see the wonder in her eyes. "Kyrathex," she said clearly, "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez. I speak for the Human Diplomatic Corps. We welcome this opportunity for contact between our peoples." The dragon's response was immediate and unmistakable. His eyes glowed brighter, and a complex harmony of sounds emerged from his throat. But more than that, Marcus felt the telepathic communication extending to include Dr. Vasquez and, to a lesser extent, the others in their group. Images flooded their collective consciousness, star maps showing the positions of sleeping guardian dragons throughout the galaxy, technical diagrams of weapons and defensive systems beyond human comprehension, and most urgently, astronomical data showing disturbances in distant star systems that suggested the Devourers were beginning to stir. When the communication ended, Dr. Vasquez was pale but determined. "We need to contact Earth immediately," she said. "And we need to start learning everything Kirathex can teach us. If what he's shown us is true, humanity has very little time to prepare for the greatest threat our species has ever faced." Admiral Castellanos was already activating his emergency communication protocols. "I'm declaring a Code 7 scenario and requesting immediate consultation with the Colonial Defense Council." But Marcus barely heard them. His attention was focused on Kirathex, whose ancient eyes held depths of wisdom and sorrow that spoke of civilizations lost and battles fought against impossible odds. The dragon had been alone for 2,000 years, carrying the weight of his people's hopes and fears. Now, finally, he was no longer alone. The question was whether humanity would prove worthy of the trust he was placing in them, and whether together they could face the darkness that was coming for them all. The Alliance. 6 months after first contact with Kirathex, Mining Station Delta 7 had transformed into something unrecognizable. What had once been a simple mining operation was now the most important military and research facility in human space. The excavation site had become a sprawling complex, where human technology interfaced with dragon engineering in ways that should have been impossible. Marcus stood on the primary observation deck, watching teams of human engineers work alongside holographic projections generated by Kirathex's advanced neural systems. The dragon had proven to be not just a guardian, but a repository of technological knowledge spanning millions of years of galactic civilization. "The integration is proceeding faster than anyone predicted," said Dr. Sarah Chen, the newly appointed director of Dragon-Human Cooperative Development. She was Marcus's cousin, recruited from the Mars Technical Institute when it became clear that humanity needed its best minds working on the project. "Kirathex is an excellent teacher," Marcus replied. "He's been alone for so long, I think he's grateful to have someone to share his knowledge with." The dragon himself was currently interfaced with the station's main computer systems, his consciousness expanded through quantum neural networks that allowed him to process and share information at speeds that made human computers seem primitive by comparison. Through this interface, he had been teaching human scientists principles of physics that their civilization wouldn't have discovered for centuries. The early days after first contact had been chaotic. Admiral Castellanos had been replaced by Admiral Rebecca Stone, a specialist in xenological warfare who understood the magnitude of the threat humanity was facing. The Colonial Defense Council had mobilized resources from across human space, turning Kepler 442b into the center of the largest military buildup in human history. But it wasn't just about weapons and defenses. Kirathex had been clear from the beginning that defeating the Devourers would require more than brute force. It would require a fundamental evolution in human technology and, perhaps more importantly, in human thinking. "Marcus," Dr. Vasquez's voice came over the comm system, "Kirathex is requesting your presence in the neural interface chamber. He says he has something important to show you." Marcus made his way through corridors that now hummed with energy patterns no human architect had ever dreamed of. The neural interface chamber was a marvel of hybrid engineering where human computers and dragon consciousness merged into something greater than either could achieve alone. Kirathex's physical presence dominated the chamber. Over the months, more of his body had emerged from the mountain, revealing a creature of impossible beauty and power. His scales shifted color with his emotional state, currently showing the deep blue-green that Marcus had learned indicated focused concentration. Crystalline neural interface ports along his skull glowed with steady light as he maintained his connection to the station's systems. "Hello, old friend," Marcus said as he entered the chamber. The telepathic connection between them had grown stronger over time, allowing for almost seamless communication. "Marcus?" Kyrathex's mental voice carried warmth and urgency in equal measure. "I have been monitoring long-range sensors throughout the galaxy. The Devourers are stirring more quickly than I anticipated. We have perhaps one standard year before the first scouting fleets reach this region of space." The news hit Marcus like a physical blow. All their projections had assumed they would have at least 5 years to prepare. "Are you certain?" "The gravitational disturbances are unmistakable. They are awakening their ship cities and beginning the consumption process in the outer spiral arms. The pattern is exactly what my people observed 2,000 years ago." Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. As the primary human liaison to Kyrathex, he had become the bridge between two very different civilizations trying to unite against a common threat. "What do we need to do?" he asked. "We must accelerate all our preparations, but more than that, we must begin the awakening of my brothers and sisters. The network of guardians spans this entire galactic region. Together, we may have the power to stop the Devourers. Alone, both our species will fall." Over the following weeks, Marcus found himself at the center of the most ambitious project in human history. Using Kyrathex's knowledge of guardian locations, human ships began reaching out across the galaxy to locate and awaken the other sleeping dragons. Each awakening required careful preparation and the presence of humans who could serve as telepathic bridges, a role that seemed to require specific mental characteristics that were rare but not impossible to find. The first successful awakening came from the Centauri system, where Dr. James Wright, a xenopsychologist, managed to establish contact with a guardian called Vorlash the World Keeper. The second came from the outer colonies, where Commander Lisa Park awakened Zephyra the Stormwing. Each new guardian brought unique capabilities and knowledge, but also confirmation of Kyrathex's warnings about the approaching threat. Meanwhile, human technology was advancing at an unprecedented rate. The integration of dragon knowledge was producing weapons, defenses, and spacecraft that exceeded humanity's wildest dreams. The new ships combined human engineering with dragon biotechnology, creating vessels that were as much alive as they were mechanical. Marcus spent his days coordinating between the various awakening teams, the research groups, and the military planners who were trying to prepare humanity for a war unlike any in their history. But his evenings belonged to Kyrathex, and their conversations had become the highlight of his day. "Tell me about your people," Marcus said one evening as they watched the sunset through the chamber's massive windows. "What were they like before the Devourers came?" Kyrathex's mental voice carried a note of deep sadness. "We were explorers, builders, gardeners of worlds. My species believed that consciousness was the most precious thing in the universe, and we dedicated ourselves to nurturing it wherever we found it. We helped young civilizations reach for the stars, defended peaceful worlds from natural disasters, and preserved the knowledge of cultures that had passed into history. It sounds like a golden age. It was, in many ways. But perhaps we grew too confident, too comfortable. When the Devourers first appeared, we assumed they were simply another challenge to overcome. We didn't understand that they represented something fundamentally antithetical to everything we believed in." Marcus felt echoes of the dragon's memories. Vast cities floating among the stars, worlds transformed into gardens of impossible beauty, and species from across the galaxy working together in harmony. Then came darker images, worlds stripped bare in a matter of days, entire star systems going dark as the Devourers consumed everything that lived. "How did your people finally stop them?" "We didn't stop them. We contained them at tremendous cost. The final battle required the sacrifice of most of our civilization. My people transformed themselves into living weapons, pouring their consciousness into guardians like myself, and scattered across the galaxy to maintain a watch. The Devourers were forced into hibernation, but we knew they would return. The weight of that sacrifice wasn't lost on Marcus. An entire civilization had given up everything they were to buy the universe time. And now they're returning. Yes, but this time, we are not alone. Humanity has proven to be everything my people hoped to find: creative, adaptable, and brave enough to stand against impossible odds. Together we may succeed where my people alone could not. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Admiral Stone. Marcus, we need you in the command center immediately. We've received a priority transmission from the Vega system. Marcus found the command center in a state of controlled chaos. Admiral Stone stood before a massive holographic display showing the outer regions of human space, her expression grim. Dr. Chen and several other senior staff members were studying data streams from long-range sensors. "What's the situation?" Marcus asked. "The Vega colony has gone silent," Admiral Stone replied. "Their last transmission was a distress call reporting unknown vessels in the system. That was 6 hours ago." Marcus felt ice forming in his stomach. Devourers? "We think so. Long-range sensors are detecting massive gravitational disturbances consistent with Kirithex's descriptions of their technology. If they've reached Vega, they're moving faster than any of our projections indicated." "How long until they reach the core systems?" "At their current rate of advance, maybe 3 months. 4 at the outside." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of billions of lives hanging in the balance. When he opened them again, his expression was set with determination. "Then we accelerate everything. How many Guardians are awake?" 7, including Kirathex. 3 more are in the awakening process." "That's not enough. We need to wake them all, even if it means taking risks with the process." Admiral Stone nodded grimly. "I've already given those orders. But Marcus, even if we wake every Guardian in the galaxy, we're talking about maybe 30 dragons against Devourer fleets that could number in the thousands. Then we'll have to be smarter than they are. Kirathex says the Devourers are powerful, but not particularly creative. They follow patterns, use proven tactics. If we can disrupt their patterns, force them to adapt faster than they're capable of, we might have a chance." Over the next several weeks, the pace of activity reached a fevered intensity. Human fleets equipped with dragon-enhanced technology began moving toward the outer systems, not to engage the Devourers directly, but to slow their advance and buy time for the awakening process to complete. Meanwhile, the Guardians who were already awake began working together in ways they hadn't been able to do for 2 millennia. Their combined knowledge allowed them to reconstruct technologies that their original civilization had thought lost forever. Marcus found himself spending more and more time in telepathic interface with multiple dragons simultaneously, serving as a focal point for coordination between the Guardians and human forces. The mental strain was enormous, but the alternative was the extinction of both species. The breakthrough came when Kirathex and his siblings completed their reconstruction of something called the World Singer, a device that could channel the combined consciousness of all awakened Guardians into a single focused force. It wouldn't destroy the Devourers, but it might be able to force them back into hibernation and buy the galaxy another few thousand years of peace. But using the World Singer would require a human consciousness to serve as the focusing element, someone who could maintain telepathic contact with all the Guardians simultaneously while withstanding forces that could easily destroy an unprotected mind. Marcus knew even before Kirathex asked that it would have to be him. The final battle came sooner than anyone expected. The Devourers reached the Sol system just as the last Guardian was awakening, forcing humanity to make their stand at Earth itself. The enemy fleet was everything Kirathex had warned about, and worse. Vast ship cities that consumed matter and energy on a scale that defied comprehension, surrounded by swarms of smaller vessels that moved with perfect, emotionless coordination. But humanity had learned much in their months of preparation. Their new ships, guided by dragon consciousness and crewed by humans who had trained in telepathic interface techniques, fought with a coordination and creativity that the Devourers had never encountered before. And at the center of it all, 30 awakened guardians moved through space like living gods, their combined power focused through the World Singer and channeled by Marcus's human consciousness. The battle raged for hours, with both sides taking terrible losses. But gradually the Devourers began to falter. Their perfect coordination broke down under the chaotic creativity of human tactics and the raw power of the Guardians. And finally, when Marcus channeled the full force of the World Singer against the Devourer command ships, the enemy fleet began to withdraw. They didn't retreat. Creatures like the Devourers didn't understand retreat. But they entered a dormant state, their ship cities going dark as they drifted toward the outer darkness between galaxies. It would be thousands of years before they woke again, if they ever did. In the aftermath of the battle, as humans and dragons worked together to rebuild what had been damaged and plan for an uncertain future, Marcus stood once again on Kepler 442b, watching the sunset paint the alien sky in shades of gold and crimson. Kirathex was beside him, his massive presence a comfort after all they had endured together. "We did it," the dragon said simply. "Yes," Marcus replied, "but at such a cost." Both species had paid dearly for their victory. Thousands of human ships had been lost along with their crews. Several of the Guardians had sacrificed themselves to power the World Singer, joining their ancestors in the long sleep of heroes. "The cost of freedom is always high," Kirathex observed. "But the cost of slavery would have been the end of everything we value." Marcus nodded, thinking of the future they had fought to preserve. Humanity and the dragons would continue to work together, exploring the galaxy and protecting the younger civilizations that would someday join them among the stars. It wouldn't be the same golden age that the dragons had known before, but it might be something even better, a new civilization built on the foundations of cooperation between very different kinds of consciousness. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now we build something new," Kirathex replied. "Something neither of our species could have achieved alone. And we prepare for the day when the Devourers might return, or when some new threat emerges from the darkness between stars. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders, Marcus Chen. Our work has only just begun." As the alien sun set behind the mountains of Kepler 442b, Marcus felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced since the day he first descended into the cavern and found a sleeping dragon. The future was uncertain, but it was a future worth fighting for, a future where human creativity and dragon wisdom could light the way for generations yet to be born.